Monza, the Italian Grand Prix. One of my favourite races. Great shame not to be there this year. Missed so much. I just miss the hotel. Actually, the hotel in Desio, where I regularly stay, I discovered from Goodyear back in the early 70s. And basically I've been there ever since. I've been 1 or 2 years in the Carlos Reutemann era when I stayed in different places. But generally speaking, I've been in that wonderful hotel in Desio near the track ever since the early 70s. So yeah, I'm really missing you guys, really, guys at the hotel. ART stay there these days. It was always good to catch up with ART every year there. Anyway, yeah, Monza Friday. To the backdrop, really, of the whole Williams situation, there was a clarification from the new owners that the current management will no longer be around. And I think from Mugello onwards, next race, they're going to be announcing an interim team principal. That's good news, I think, because I don't think they can get any worse than where they are, and I think any change in management, therefore, is going to be for the better. Whether it's going to be a great change in management, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, there are stories out there for Graham Loudon, who I think would do a very good job, ex-Manor, of course, and he knew James Matthews, who's one of the key players, as I think exclusively revealed on this channel when we did our initial report on the Williams buyout. James Matthews did race Formula Renault for Manor at one point, and is now married into the royal family anyway. He looks like a really good bloke. Anyway, obviously Graham Loudon would know him, so he's a potential team principal, which would be very good. I think he did a really good job. He's done a really good job over the years. He's a real racer, and I think he understands racing very well, and the history of racing and the importance of all the things that make it work today. I think it could be him. Somebody like, I don't know, Karun Chandok, who's a great Williams guy, would be another very good person to have in there. And if it was me making decisions, of course it's not, I would put Paddy Lowe back in there, because for me, to judge Paddy Lowe on what happened during his time at Williams is basically the same as judging, I don't know, Honda on how they perform when they were with at McLaren. McLaren did not get the best from Honda. They didn't organise them well enough. They didn't ask the right questions. They didn't get anything like the same feedback from Honda and results from Honda that Red Bull have got. And I think it's the same with Paddy Lowe. I think he was very miscast and misused when he was at Williams before, and I still think he's got a lot in him, and he would be a perfect guy to have back there. But that's only me. That's only my opinion. I think, as I say, any change is going to be for the better, because going down this route of management as it is at the moment would have just would have just petered out, I think. So very good news that there is a management change. I've had a lot of emails and a lot of messages from friends and associates saying how emotional they feel about the Williams family leaving. But for me, it kind of happened when Frank sort of backed away and appointed a deputy team principal, because at that moment it fell into the wrong path, and none of the management decisions made since then really have done anything for the team at all. So for me, that was the moment to feel emotional when that happened. Of course, one has to feel for Frank Williams and for everything he's put into the sport. You know, it wasn't that long ago that he turned down an offer from BMW to buy the team, as when they were winning races with BMW. And I always thought that would have been the right moment for Williams to sell out, to be honest, but they didn't. They continued, and then they did that sort of, that public listing, and they all got a lot of money then, Patrick and Frank, and then it kind of all went wrong. Obviously, Frank got ill, and as I say, management-wise, it's sort of gone downhill rapidly ever since then. So, let's be positive about this. I think hopefully it's in good hands. I mean, the big thing about buying a Formula One team is obviously the purchase price. Then it's discovering whether there's any debt. I doubt that there is at Williams. It's probably been very well run as a company. But of course, the running costs every year are what really come into it. So for the next 3, 4, 5 years, to get the team back high midfield, it's going to be a long haul. But it looks like the people behind it seem to have serious cash, if that's the case, and they get some good people in there. Graham Loudon, maybe Karun Chandok, who knows? Maybe even Johnny Williams, I think, would be good to have as some sort of global ambassador for the Williams name and brand. I don't know anybody that knows more about Williams as a race team than Johnny. And to me, it's always been astounding that he hasn't been used more by the management that's just about to go out the door, or has left already. Anyway, let's have a look at the lap times. Hope you don't mind if I just look down here. Lewis Hamilton quickest 20.1 on the soft tyre, and Valtteri Bottas 20.4. That doesn't surprise me because Lewis, like Lando Norris, before he did his time, it was very obvious even before he did his time to be P3, Charles Leclerc, Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll all looking really good out of one of the most revealing sections of Monza. Let me explain what I mean about that. Monza itself, you could say, is a relatively straightforward, relatively simple circuit, not many corners, but there's a lot of little things you can notice at Monza that add up to a difference in lap time. We'll get on to something that Lewis does at turn 1 in a minute, but one of the most obvious places, and one of the best places to watch actually if you're on the outside of Ascari, is to watch the exit of Ascari. That's that very fast S-bend on the back of the circuit, but as they're going down that long straight before they go into Parabolica, which is the last corner of the lap. And to be behind them there is to see which drivers have the detail to stay on the right-hand side of the road as long as they can comfortably do so whilst the car's accelerating in 6th, 7th, up to 8th gear, probably 7th to 8th, before they move the car back to the left or over to the left for braking for the Parabolica. It shouldn't be so that the car is uncomfortable and you're making an S-bend halfway down the straight, but you should certainly live with the car in a straight line parallel to the curb whilst the car is accelerating out of Ascari. And that's because, and all credit here to Rob Wilson, whose name I think is becoming more and more revered in Formula One paddocks. The work he's doing with some of the drivers now, a lot of which is in secret, but some of the things he's uncovering, obvious details, are surprising many of the engineers in a Formula One pit lane at the moment. And one of the things Rob discovered several years ago, and the nail was hit right on the head by Rob, was that when you are accelerating in a Formula One car with high downforce and you move that car just with steering wheel movement from one side of the straight, and you're absolutely flat out just accelerating to the other side of the straight, G loading, lateral G, is going through the car, therefore through the engine, and that lateral G for sure eats some of the revs out of the engine. So that being so, how do you minimize the loss? You do that by accelerating in a straight line for as long as you can and then moving back to the place where you need to be as late as you can comfortably do it. And that's because if you just accelerate from zero and you're having a race with your mate, a drag race from zero, and you've got a manual transmission and you miss first to second, that's going to have a much bigger penalty on your acceleration run than if you have a great first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and then you miss fourth to fifth. You can just about get away with that. Obviously, it will slow the car down, but you don't lose anything like as much time as you do when the car's going slowly. So the faster you're going, the better the moment for moving across and putting this G-loading through the engine. It's pretty basic, simple stuff. That's why Lewis Hamilton does it all the time when he's on his own. I don't know if an engineer's ever told him to do that, but for him it's completely natural. Charles Leclerc has been doing it ever since I've been watching him in, I think it was GP3 then, before it was F3, certainly F2, and for sure throughout his F1 career. Lance Stroll has been doing it really well today, but that's because he does a lot of work with Rob Wilson. And so is Nicholas Latifi, interestingly enough. And you look at the times, and there's Latifi actually, maybe the first time, I don't know, but he's a 10th quicker than George Russell. Now, I know George was complaining about some imbalance, I think, before the braking area going into turn 1, but I'd be willing to bet that Latifi's car isn't perfect, that's for sure. Anyway, he's somewhere near George, you could say that. And one of the reasons is the detail of his driving around Monza looked really, really good. Stroll, too. I think Stroll is 21.3, Sergio Perez 21.5. And that wouldn't be the only place they're doing things like that. Now let's get back to Lewis. He does all that. He keeps the car in a straight line as long as possible. What Lewis does really well, I think, around Monza is when he's up on the curbs on exit, coming out of, say, the chicane before the Lesmo, second chicane, it's a right-hand exit, obviously in the curb on the left. If the car's got a bit of angle on it because of that, he then doesn't try to straighten the car up. He just accelerates with that angle on the car just keeps the car straight. He did it twice today, saw that. And and that's what Lewis is all about. He's so linear in the way he drives. And another thing he does, this doesn't come at a heading of linear, well, it kind of does, but in order to create the linear thing, it's something else. But in turn one, and I have to confess, this is Rob showing me this a couple of years ago, and I noticed it today with Lewis when you compare the onboards. He goes into turn one, into the right, about the same as Valtteri Bottas, no difference there. But as he sets the car up for the left of turn one, in other words, the exit left-hander, you can see he's putting on just a little bit of extra lock in the middle of the corner, just to get the car a little bit straighter on exit. And he's got a slightly straighter car than Valtteri out of there. And that reminds me of the exit of turn two in Barcelona, where he also does that really well. So he's basically got the car slightly straighter earlier than Valtteri coming out of that first chicane, which means, of course, that he's got a better acceleration run. And it is a long acceleration run out of that chicane down to the second chicane. So they were some of the little details that were obvious today. We'll see some more tomorrow. I should add through all of this, of course, and this point needs to be made, that obviously if you are following another car at a critical moment in qualifying or the race for sure, and you're dependent on some sort of tow, and that other car is not doing what you want to do and it's moving across the road sooner than you would like to. Nonetheless, it's still quicker to follow him than it is to do your own thing. Obviously, you have to stay in the wake of the other car. You have to get the tow as much as possible. That's why you see so many cars doing that. And you won't see what I just described. You won't see that anything like as much in the race as you will in untimed practice, when drivers sometimes are on their own and they can do their own thing. So Friday for that is a really, really good day for watching. Let's have a look at some of the other results from today. Lando Norris, absolutely brilliant to be P3. And again, you know, looking at the detail of his driving around the lap, particularly that section of road, not massively surprised. Pierre Gasly, I didn't get to see what Pierre was doing there. I don't know why. We didn't really see a lot. Well, when he was quick, I wasn't watching, obviously, or something was going on. But Pierre Gasly, again, driving really well to be, you know, right up there with the Honda-powered AlphaTauri ahead of Max Verstappen. Of course, Max had a lose in the middle of the Ascari chicane in the morning. It wasn't a big thing, but you know, these things happen. Interestingly, Max ran the hard tyre at the end whilst Lewis was on the medium. So again, it looks like we've got a nice mix and match of raceable tyres here. Also interesting to see everybody going out 2/3 of the way through the second untimed session on the soft tyre. This reflects, I guess, the change in regulations that the engine mode primarily used for qualifying until now is no longer going to be allowed, and everybody has to qualify with the same mode they'll be using on the engine in the race. And maybe that was the sort of first time, okay, let's see what happens if we're running this engine mode. And guess what? Not a lot. Well, having said that, yeah, no, that's unfair. Ferrari, you could say, 9th and 12th are actually probably a little bit further up at the moment than they would have been based on what we saw at Spa. Charles Leclerc had a couple of moments and went on the radio at how difficult the car was to drive, obviously totally trimmed out. So, yeah, I mean, whether you'll be able to keep that up tomorrow, because behind they've got guys like Alex Albon, Daniel Ricciardo, well, those two. So unlikely they'll be quicker than Ricciardo or Albon tomorrow, although Albon didn't look very good. He didn't look very good in terms of what he was doing with the positioning of the car, and he didn't look very good in terms of, there was one analysis that came up, it was quite an interesting one, of comparing Pierre Gasly and Alex into the parabolic or through the parabolica based on about 100 meters before the corner to the exit. Not necessarily fair because you don't know about fuel loads, you don't know about tires and everything else, but on that one section of road, Gasly was better in every area. It was better on the braking, transition, and also on acceleration. So that's a little bit of a worry, or continuing worry really, for Alex Albon. Whether it's a worry for Red Bull is another matter. Of course, they'd love to finish 1-2 in every race, but they've got Max. They don't want a guy that's going to be cramping Max's style, as I've said a million times. They probably want Alex to be a lot nearer to Max, let's say 0.1, 0.2, as I've been saying all year, which he isn't and doesn't look at the moment he's going to be anywhere near that. He might around Monza in qualifying on a good set of tyres with a lot of grip, a lot of confidence, he might be able to do that. But when the variables come into play, as we've said before, and the footwork and the handwork comes into something approaching delicacy mid-corner, when the variables are coming in the race, then Max is just long gone into the distance. Renault were 11th and 15th, but I don't think that is reflective of where they were. Daniel did a lot of work on the medium tyres. He did 10 laps on the medium, but he also did a lot on the soft, 14 laps on the soft. So that shows that they are looking at where they can be in terms of race management. And I thought it was a very good job too by Alfa Romeo. Antonio Giovinazzi 13, Kimi Raikkonen P17, but again, a few issues with Kimi. But Alfa Romeo in general looked to have made a little bit of progress at the expense of Ferrari, dare I say it. Anyway, we're back again tomorrow with a report from Saturday at Monza. See you then.